So, I left off with going to school at Idaho State. The school is in Pocatello, Idaho. I chose to live in Idaho Falls, which is about 40 minutes away or so. And the majority of my classes, I was able to live in Idaho Falls because the classes were simulcast. They would either be taught live in Idaho Falls and simulcast to Pocatello, or taught live in Pocatello and simulcast over to Idaho Falls. And so I was enrolled generally at the extension in Idaho Falls. And that worked out just fine. So I spent 2 years in Idaho and absolutely loved it. It was kind of a preview of what my retirement from the military was going to be like, at least kind of in some respects. And let's see. After that, I went to San Antonio, where I taught for 4 years, and I love teaching. Whether it's teaching health physics, radiation safety, or teaching rock climbing, I am the kind of person where I'll open the black box, I'll get something new, whether it's learning rock climbing or learning some kind of a new thing, whatever the new thing is. My first impulse is to start teaching that thing. And I guess, I don't know, maybe that's part of my drive to teach what I've learned about the Bible. Because, one, I want to teach that information that I've learned. But two, it's not just the information, because God has done so much more than just let me learn information. He's brought me through things in my life that have moved that information from here to here. And that's important, because it was probably, about a year ago, I was introduced to a book. What was the name of it? Sacred Pathways, I believe. I believe the name of the book was Sacred Pathways. And it contained 9 worship personalities. I forget exactly how the author described these things, but we'll identify with about 3 of them, or will have some level of that's like me, with about 3 of the 9. And it's different, obviously it's different for every person, right? I identify very heavily with the naturalist. That was his title for it, the naturalist, which basically means that I feel closest to God when I am outdoors. I would rather have a church service in the woods. When you go to church camps, church summer camps, and they always have like an outdoor chapel with like the benches, I love that. I would do that year round. If it weren't for the cold, the snow. My father baptized me in a little stream in backwoods Senegal. And I chose to baptize my children in Cascade Lake, Idaho. I did that very intentionally. I did not want my children baptized in a building. I wanted my children baptized in a lake or stream or river, but in God's grand cathedral, in the outdoors. So I identify, going hiking, being out in nature. I feel closest to God when I am out in nature. So I identify very closely with the naturalist. I also identify very much with the traditionalist. So this is, part of my story that I'll get to. But the traditionalist is someone who loves the liturgy. So the Book of Common Prayer, following a liturgy rather than, a Sunday morning concert followed by a 40-minute TED Talk. That does nothing for me. I love the liturgy. Now, are there downsides to the liturgy? Yeah, and we can get into that later. But, for someone who grew up with it, we call them cradle Catholics or cradle Lutherans or cradle Episcopalians, whatever you want to, the danger there is that it just becomes rote, and it's just performative and recitation, and there's no heart in it. But for me, having not grown up in it and coming to it with a solid doctrinal foundation, it isn't rote and it isn't performative. It's beautiful and it's full of joy. I love the liturgy. I absolutely love the liturgy. So I identify with the traditionalist. And I also identify with, I can't remember what he called it exactly, but essentially it's the scholar. The person who wants to get into the Bible and tear apart the words and look at the history and find all the cross connections and become a Bible scholar, understand the Greek and Hebrew languages and just dig in. I very much identify with that. And these three sort of worship personalities define who I am and how I approach God, and the ways in which I feel most connected to God, and the ways the things that bring me into worship of Him, more than anything else. And those are the three that I identify with. There's 6 more, and if you're interested in them, by all means buy the book. It's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it. So that's me, So, as I approach this and you see the scholar come out in me, or I'm talking about the outdoors, and or if I pull out my Book of Common Prayer, and why. that's who I am. Those are the ways in which I feel closest to God. Those are the forms of worship that speak most deeply to me, and so I hope as we go along that that explains me to you. I'm not sure how I got on that topic. I'll have to go back and watch it. Okay, so, because I love teaching, right? Yeah, that's how I got on that topic. So I spent 4 years teaching in San Antonio, in that time, now, in my military career, I've been deployed. I was deployed about 3 times. The first was in 2003, Iraq, the very beginning of the Iraq War. I was in country for 65 days. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go home early, but they decided they didn't need our unit and they sent us home. And it is what it is. We were in a very specialized unit. And let's see, my next deployment was Honduras, 2006, 2007, like October of '06 to April of '07, something like that. And I was in Honduras during a time when it's very peaceful, very open country. And in many ways it still is, but that has shifted over time. There was a time after I left, a couple years after I left, there was a little bit of a coup, I believe, if I recall correctly. And so I know the military folks that were in Honduras at that time didn't have as much freedom as I had when I was there. I don't know what things are like now, but when I was there, we had a lot of freedom, and we were able to sign out on Friday night, Saturday night, and go down about a mile. There was a really nice, I say really nice, it was a very decent steakhouse restaurant, local food establishment, not any kind of chain or anything. It was very, very good. They served very good wine, and they had excellent steaks and food in general. And, very large, sometimes 20 of us at a time would go and do that. And I got to work with the local Honduran engineers in the water system, the water planning engineers. I got to work with them, and they would take, we'd go pick them up wherever, whether it was in Comayagua or La Paz or up in Siguatapeque, I believe. We would go pick them up, and they would take us out to where all their wells were, all their municipal wells, and we would get GPS points on those municipal wells, and we ended up creating an electronic map, a GPS map of where all those wells were, and I ended up deploying a free software system and connecting that GPS map to it, so that they could use that for planning and planning where the wells would go and things like that. And I don't know. I enjoyed the work very much. I do hope that it was positive. I know the military got a lot out of it because they got a lot of intel and information about where all the wells were and things like that. And the whole point was, if they ever had to do like a humanitarian response or whatnot, they wanted to, that's good information to have. I do hope, though, that in responding, in building that map, that those local engineers were able to use that in a positive way. I don't know. I never really kept in touch with any of them, so I don't know. But I do hope it had a positive impact. A lot of things happened in that deployment. One was, I realized that I didn't really need to be a doctor to do what I had hoped, what I was planning to do as a missionary. And the other thing that I learned during that deployment was, if God doesn't send me back to Africa, that's okay. Because up until that point, up until 2006, 2007, as far as I was concerned, I needed to go back to Senegal to be a missionary. That was my home. That was where I needed to be. And that 6 months that I spent in Honduras, I realized anywhere in the third world would be absolutely fine. I didn't need to go back to Africa. In fact, I was very comfortable in Central America, very, very comfortable. I had no fear whatsoever. And I would have happily, I would happily be a missionary to Central America. That would not be a problem for me. I would go to India if God took me to India. That's, again, not a problem. But God rarely puts us where we're comfortable. And I think the fact that I am so comfortable with the third world is why God has not allowed me to go back. And here I am. Here I am in the place that I would flee. I would absolutely flee the United States and go to the third world, where the third world is home. It's where I grew up. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's where I want to be. And God is just not going to let me go there. He's keeping me here where I'm uncomfortable, where I have to trust Him, where I actually have some fear, and I have to depend on Him. So, I'd rather be in backwoods Africa or Central America or India or wherever. I'd much rather be there than the United States, but here I am. So that all of that to say that my third deployment was while I was in San Antonio, 2018. I think it was February of 2018 to like August, September, November timeframe. It was like February to November timeframe, something like that, of 2018. And was deployed with 1st Medical Brigade. 1st Medical Brigade is out of Fort Hood. Is deployed attached to the headquarters of the 1st Medical Brigade. Deployed to Qatar, based out of Qatar. But out of the 9 months, I traveled for 5 months. I went to Kuwait, Qatar, obviously, Iraq, Afghanistan. I spent 30 days in Afghanistan. I went to Egypt. I never did get to go. The two countries I didn't get to visit was Jordan and Syria. Jordan and Syria were both active at the time. I could have gone there, but it just never worked out. So it is what it is, I would have liked to have checked those off the list, but oh well. But what was different about that deployment was that from day one, because always in previous deployments I had kind of shunned. That's not the right word. I had resisted God in whatever it was that He wanted to work in my life. I had resisted Him until the very last minute, and then I would finally give in, and then there's no time left to actually work on whatever it is that He had in mind. So this time, I said to Him, I am going to bow the knee to You from day one. And I did. And that deployment was incredibly difficult. I will, that's a whole story in itself. But that's what came out of that. And then in June of 2020, I retired from the military. June 30th of 2020, I retired. And I went to work for West Physics as a radiation safety consultant. West Physics is a national physics consulting firm, and we do radiation safety consulting for large medical centers. And so I went to work for West Physics doing that, and they sent me to the Chicago area. I lived in Glendale Heights for a year, and then I bought a house in Elgin and lived there for 2 years, which is ironically really, really close to Hoffman Estates, where my mother grew up. So that was an interesting sort of coming around, you know. And now I live in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, which is very close to Waukesha. And I have yet to go visit the Bible college that my mother went to, but I'm planning to do that at some point in the near future.